All right, good?
Yep.
All right, my name is Blake Smith, and here's my story so far. I worked for this hedge fund for a couple years. We ended up funding kind of like a new startup, and so I got to work in that environment for the first time, and I found it really cool. It's so cool, in fact, that I'd say I probably gave a lot of my identity to that work a lot of ways. I was in the office at 7 and often stay until 7 or 8 at night. My wife Chandler and I were young and married, and so we both kind of enjoyed. We just were like two individuals living in the same house. We'd work 12 hours a day, and then we'd come home and we could reflect on the day, and it was it worked fine. And then my wife got pregnant, and when that happened, everything kind of started to shift a little bit. I think I started kind of asking this question of is this the life that I want to lead? Do I want to be gone 12 hours a day? And it was actually while working with this hedge fund that I saw a different way that family and business could operate. And specifically this family that owned this hedge fund. They were a high net worth family, and I just noticed that every business meeting was also a family meeting. They had grown up kids, but they tended to do business together. And so it was almost like there wasn't this competition between work and family. It was almost like they were all kind of combined into the same thing. It dawned on me, that's more of what I want to have. I want to be able to integrate my life and my family together rather than feel like they're competing in this way. And so that kind of flicked me into the entrepreneurial world, because my conclusion was that in order to build the life that I wanted on my terms, I had to own the entity, I had to own the business that I was working with. And so, yeah, we set off to do a startup. We started a company called Cladwell. It's in the fashion space. And we did most of the major mistakes you can make in terms of co-founder relationships, in terms of not having a CEO initially, raising a bunch of money without having a product, mostly from friends and family. I feel like it was just constantly, every day, I was trying something new that I'd never done before and failing at it pretty badly. And then that night, researching online or reading books on how to do it better the next day. And it just felt like everything was a new experience each time. It taught us a ton, especially those first couple of years. I feel like it got to level up my game a lot from a work standpoint. And in some ways, I was starting to integrate. We had a young family, only 2 kids at that time by that point. And so I was able to at least bring them in to work, and that was pretty cool. And then we started to get some traction with the business, which was really cool. So we started to scale up the team. I think at that point we got up to 20 or 25 people. And then we ended up moving to Silicon Valley to go through a startup accelerator called 500 Startups. That was intoxicating. Just the environment of San Francisco was just amazing, and the people that I got to meet through that process. It was a 4-month accelerator. It's like summer camp for startups. We made all these friendships from all over the world, and everybody was there with the same vision of trying to create this better world, both through their business and also with their business for themselves. And it was amazing. But I'd say at that point I started to lose the plot a little bit. Some of my ambitions started to catch up, and I was beginning to fall in love with the idea of being a startup CEO, and maybe that was the better life that I wanted. And if we rewind back a little bit, the whole reason I started this thing was because I was hoping to integrate this life of family and work together. And I'd say it all kind of came to a head after we were trying to close a bigger round of funding, and I was in Los Angeles. My family was back here at this place in Cincinnati, and my wife was pregnant with our 5th child. And I get a text at 6 in the morning, so 9 o'clock here, and she says, "Hey, I think I'm miscarrying." The whole day that I had lined up in Los Angeles was pitching different VCs, trying to close this round of funding, and it felt like a really big priority for the business and for our life, honestly. But getting that text, it was almost like I was faced with oh, I have all the stuff that I need to do for the business, but also my wife and my family need me right now. The paths were directly in front of me of what will I choose? And so I picked up my phone and immediately texted, "I'm on my way." And I got in the car and just drove to the airport, bought a plane ticket in the airport, and flew did a day of travel to get back here. By the time I'd arrived, it was pretty sure that the miscarriage was gonna happen. And so we ended up losing that baby in pregnancy. That kicked off a 4 or 5 day thing where I kind of bowed out of work, said hey, I need to spend family emergencies, family time together. So the 4 kids and my wife and I just kind of did a period of mourning and connecting together, and kind of just saying goodbye to the future that we hoped that we were going to have with this baby. And it was really sad, but it also, I don't know, something about it was really instrumental, and that it kind of made me, it was almost it was a final verdict on why am I doing this thing? And what was really weird was during that period, I still was in negotiations trying to raise this round of funding. And so I'm via text, just responding to terms and just whatever. And it felt like such a small compartment in a much bigger part of life that I was experiencing at that point. And so it was almost like this little video game that was like contained on my phone. That like life is happening with my kids and my wife, and like we're kind of connecting here. And then on my phone is this little game that, yeah, sure, whatever, we need to close the money. And so we ended up closing the round of funding via text during that 4-day period. And something in me broke during that. And that it put in perspective, this whole startup game is just like a little video game that can live on a phone or via email, and it's not all of life. All of life is much, much bigger. And I would say my heart kind of came home through that weekend. And what's funny is that shortly thereafter, we actually started working remotely more, which allowed me to kind of integrate my family in more. And then shortly after that, we ended up selling our startup, and I was able to exit out. And as a part of that, now I feel like I have kind of like a fresh start where I get to kind of try again at the same sort of trajectory, which is like trying to build a life where I can integrate my family and startup life together. So we started a new company called Boilerplate. I'm creating content like this for other founders, and we're doing it actually as a family team. My wife and I are working together a couple days a week. The kids are kind of involved and they know about it. Like literally when we got our first $1 of revenue a couple days ago, like all the kids celebrated, and I feel like I'm kind of starting to create the life that I wanted to create kind of on my terms. And I know that that's like a pretty niche thing that I desire. Not everybody desires that. But I think the principle still holds that like startups are really cool, and that you can, if you have a vision for the life that you want, you actually can kind of create that life on your terms. And in retrospect with the whole thing, I thought the whole thing was about kind of creating the financial fuel to build this life that I wanted. But I think what it actually was building, it was more the internal growth of building up, one, clarifying my desires, kind of polishing off a lot of rough edges, and kind of helping build me into the person that I need to be to lead an organization and to lead my family well. And that's why I really care about doing these YouTube videos, is I really care about trying to help other people go on that path. And I do hope that you are super successful financially, and that you get famous if that's what you want, and all those sorts of things. But more importantly, I hope that you get to experience the growth when you get this direct feedback from customers and from the world and from investors that's really brutal, but it'll polish you into becoming a more resilient and hopefully a person with character. I'm by no means finished yet. I'm doing it again. I'm starting another company again, but I'm doing it with the mindset of like, I think that growth is really, that's the end that I'm desiring. And whatever financial outcomes or investments we get to make along the way or whatever, that those are kind of happy elements of it, but it's not the main thing. So that's my story so far. I guess stick around and watch for chapter 2 coming over the next couple of years here. Hey, I hope you liked that video. If so, maybe watch another right here. Why not? Also, make sure to hit subscribe down below. Thanks for watching.